Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hack Attack. It's been such a long time, such a very long time.
Has been a long time.
In fact, such a long time that the show that we were talking about the last time we hack attacked is over now. It's done. It does not need to be hacked. So
What show were we talking about?
see that's the thing. Mirror Shades.
Oh
It's
yeah,
the last
Mirror
time we
Shades.
hack attacked, right? Right? It's like it's been about 1,000 years, and
Yeah, it's
here we
been
are.
good.
So, yes, welcome everybody. If you don't know, I'm Adam Koval. That one of those. That's Stephen Lumpkin, my good friend Stephen Lumpkin, and we are here to talk about role-playing games. Every once in a while, we gather together in this place to talk about how sometimes what is written in a role-playing game and what you want at the table in a role-playing game are not the same thing, and sometimes you got to do work to make that a thing.
Make it happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. So, and I'm curious, Stephen, because the reason we kind of got together for Hack Attack way back in the day was the West Marches. I wanted to, before I start dumping Star Wars all over you, before we get to the jizz, I wanted to ask you about West Marches. Can you tell me where's that at? I mean, I've seen some player side stuff, but
Yeah.
I've been
So I
studiously
haven't-
avoiding your prep streams because I'm a good player and not at all a big cheater.
So the prep streams are largely just content that fit within the systems that are already existing for the West Marches. But man, the systems that exist for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition do not support what I'm trying to do for the West Marches. They just don't do it. It's a shame.
Yeah.
So like I've got some interesting ideas percolating. Yeah, God, I haven't had the time to focus on making the game that I want to make. I'm hoping to have a little more time soon.
But you mean you
and
can't
that's all.
you can't make several games and play in them all at the same time?
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, like I think from here the objective is focus down on what I want my characters to be doing in the West Marches and how I want to reward them for doing that.
I think that was the point that I felt we hit the hardest on the last time we talked about that was the reward cycle, right?
Yep.
Like how that gets people to, because
So
ultimately
like,
you're just one person in a group of 5 trying to impart a vibe to the table, and
Yep,
if you're the
totally.
only one on board, it can be very difficult. So.
Yeah.
Do you think you can still do that with D&D? Do you think you can hack the reward structure? No.
Nope.
I saw some
Nope.
stuff you were posting on Twitter the other day. I didn't want to get into it because Twitter is like this big and the conversation's like this big.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw you talking about like reward
Insight.
structures and like stuff you wanted to. I was gonna jump in. So the tweet that got me was like, these are the things that I want the players to be doing, and I wanted to jump in and be like, yeah, but I can't do any of that stuff with D&D. Like,
Yeah. No. Like this was not at all an indictment of you as a player. It was an indictment of D&D as a system.
totally,
'Cause
yeah.
you play D&D the way D&D is systematically meant to be played, which means like I put curious, interesting stuff in your path, and you stalwartly ignore it to go get the loot, right? And
It
murder
hurts.
whatever directly in your face.
Like as a player, it causes me pain to play the game by the rules and to avoid things that I know would be really interesting to
Yes.
engage in. But I'm just such an asshole that I refuse to do a thing
Yeah.
just because I
Well,
think it would be fun.
It's funny because I have like great comparison between you and Shannon. And like Shannon has decided that a part of Bardrick's character is that Bardrick just messes with shit all the time. And so in the quest where they went to the Scrivener's Tower and like went down into the sub-basements, like she messed with shit and
Yeah.
it was terrifying and awesome. But-
Whereas in the last time we played, you were like, "There's this really cool thing happening over there," and I'm like, "No,
Keep
no,
going. Exactly.
Steven, shut up! I don't care about your trap."
Which I love.
Yeah,
And I think it's good. It's good to see. And it also clearly exposes for me. Like it's all fine. Like some people are just like, oh, I just wish like my players would play the game the way they should be playing it and mess with stuff, right? And
Yeah.
like I understand that frustration, right?
Totally.
I'm not immune to it or anything, but I really value having you in my game because you play that way and because it gives me a look at like how the game rewards you for doing certain things and other things which are not rewarded are therefore effectively punished. And so like, I don't know, it's like percolating ideas with like an insight system from something like Bloodborne, where when you encounter a monster that is truly weird, terrifying, or special, you gain experience basically just for getting a clear view of it. And then, I don't know, maybe like you declare what you want from that monster, and then you gain insight for getting it. So either you just want to get past it and you gain insight when you do, or you want to kill it, you gain insight when you do. You want to get the treasure that it has, you gain insight when you, who knows, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, these are just ideas that are percolating. And I started jotting down. I took myself out for brunch recently, just all on my lonesome, and I went out
I can say from experience, you're an excellent brunch date. So good call on that one. Nice move.
Nice. And I started writing down opposed pairs of good and evil traits.
Right, you're Pendragoning that shit.
Exactly. Hang on, maybe I even have that system nearby.
Yeah, you go look. I'll explain Pendragon. So when I say Steven is Pendragoning that, in Pendragon the characters have opposing sets of virtues and vices, essentially. So to establish the way the characters should be behaving in that game, they've got like, chastity and lust on opposing ends of a spectrum, and they move back and forth between the two. So
I ended up with something
kind of like that.
And the rule is basically when you put yourself in danger in pursuit of one of your traits, you gain a check to that trait. And so on the chaos side is rebellious, and on the law side is obedient. And then orderly, disorderly, suspicious, trusting. And then evil and good is greedy, generous, cruel, kind. And I don't have another one. I just kind of like started jotting some stuff down, right?
Yeah.
But like, I was looking at this and I was like, how do these traits tie in with what I want characters to be doing in the West Marches? Maybe they don't much. So I've got to sort of like.
I think an alignment system is one of two things in any game that uses it. Like any kind of character behavior or ethics thing, it's either to react to the narrative to say you're evil because the things you are doing are evil, or it's the flip side. It's like it's either the horse pulling the cart, or it's like somebody pushing the cart from behind and being like, you should do these things because on your character sheet it says you are evil.
Yeah.
And usually that's the kind of like reward or punishment thing that comes in on that other one. Most of the time alignment is pushing you, not a reflective state. Yeah.
So, I think there's some things there. I'd like to like toss together a starter character sheet for like a wizard, a fighter, a thief, and a cleric or whatever. And then like sit down with some friends here and be like, okay, you gain experience points in these situations, go.
Yeah, totally.
And then just see how it plays. And then the big work for designing a West Marches game is in refining the systems required for playing a sandbox hex crawl. Because right now, it's just a hodgepodge, right? And like it's an interesting hodgepodge that's doing some interesting things sometimes, but I don't think it's working smoothly.
I think the fun thing to observe happen, and maybe less fun to like play it and have that feeling of like, oh, we're doing something that isn't fun for anyone, is watching travel systems evolve. And you can see them in a bunch of different games, but travel is just like so hard to make it seem fun without just Indiana Jonesing it, because it becomes like, are you ready to make 11 rolls in a row?
Yes. So that's actually, I've advanced on a third iteration of the travel system that does away with that. And I haven't gone too terribly far, but basically the idea is that you roll to generate the kind of story your travel is going to sort of the story structure your travel is going to occupy. And so it's like, do you have a smooth travel and it's just one roll, or do you end up encroaching on forbidden ground?
Yeah.
And then it's like, we have sort of a multiple encounter sort of travel story where you've encroached on forbidden ground, and as a result of that, these things happen. Or are you being chased by something? Like that's, to give you a little bit of a spoiler, but I think it's pretty obvious. That's the travel story that you all are engaged in right now.
Right. I like, so what you're saying is like, rather than talk about like
day by day rolls to see randomly what happens, it's like,
is there a complication? If so, what kind of complication? And then go with that on the nerd. Okay. Yeah, I can feel that. Yeah, because so often it's like today, and this is just like every like travel system's like, today is a clear day, nothing happens.
Yep.
Today is clear, and I feel like systems either do that kind of like almanac style, like figure out every detail and probably nothing happens, but it's mental background stuff,
Yep.
or like with Stars Without Number, it's like it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. You're fucked. Everybody dies.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's this sort of tension of like, well, we're only rolling because there's a 1 in 1,000 chance the ship will just explode,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a tricky thing because when we think of fiction and how it portrays travel, we're like, wow, cool, road trips
Yes.
and
Yes.
journeys from the
Exactly.
Shire to Mount Doom and all that, and like it's fun and exciting, but it's so hard. That's a hard thing to mechanize, harder I think by a long shot than like a fight or something,
Yes,
right? Like,
definitely. So like actually, one of the things that I want to do more of is play more games because I don't have time to play more
yeah,
games.
word.
One of the games that I really want to play and dig into a little bit for like 12 sessions or something, who knows, is Lord of the Rings: The One Ring. Because I played it before and I think that its travel system is a little bit better than your average travel system. 'Cause
Definitely.
travel,
I think it's funny. We should talk about travel systems. We should do a like a 3-person hack attack and get John Harper in here because I know John has some very strong feelings about the One Ring.
awesome. Like
And
strong.
you,
Yeah.
I don't want to spoiler John's opinion for him, but
I already
I've
know.
heard that there's some good stuff to it. I would suggest do a compare and contrast. I haven't seen the second edition because I guess there's like a revised second edition of the One Ring. Try to do a compare and contrast between that and Mouse Guard and see how like Mouse Guard's thing goes. We should, what we should do? I can run Mouse Guard like from memory basically. I'll bring my iPad and we'll try to get it. Let's try to get a game in a Mouse Guard at PAX. Let's try to just get
Yes.
like a couple of people and
100%.
I'll run it for you so you can see because that I think elides the long drawn out travel stuff into a single roll, but the roll becomes a flowchart of GM controlled gating, right? Like, because I think that what often happens is that if you have a static system that's about determining the minutia of moment to moment travel, you can't stop, right? When you're like, I have 12 rolls I have to make. Once you're on roll 3 or 4 and you're like, this is so boring, kill me.
Yes.
You're like,
Go.
nope, gotta keep doing it. You got 9 more rolls, hit that shit up. But in Mouse Guard, you roll, and if the players succeed, then done. You go to the place you're going. But
Yeah.
if they fail, the GM has lots of different things to say, like, okay, a new complication, some other
Yes.
thing, you deal with that. Then you deal with this other thing. But at any point, even on a failure, the GM can close the gate and be like, okay, you arrive. Right? Like you have the thing you wanted, but there's some stuff, you've used up some resources, and now everybody is tired, or one of you is sick because the weather
Yes.
was cold. And like I think that system derives from the fact that the characters are not quite so grand. Like I wouldn't just like plunk that kind of thing onto D&D, but it feels a lot more like. Do you ever use skill challenges? You ever play 40?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
feels a lot more like that.
I hated skill challenges.
What did you not like about them? Okay, so they're not good for everything, but I think for
Yeah.
montagey travel shit, they're actually pretty on point.
Maybe so, and maybe I just didn't use them right. For me, skill challenges felt overly abstract and overly mechanical
Yeah,
without the connection to the fiction.
yeah, I feel that. I think if you GM them, it didn't give you good advice for GMing them, and they
Yeah.
weren't really tied to the fiction because you could very easily be like, all right, if you want to get from Waterdeep to, I literally can't name another town in Forgotten Realms.
Baldur's Gate.
There you go. Jesus. Fake geek
Icewind
boy.
Dale.
Fake geek boy over here. So yeah, if you want to get from place A to place B, then somebody make strength check, somebody make a dex check, somebody make an int check, boom, you're there, right? Like you can very lazily GM your way through that stuff. But yeah, that's a thing. So travel, sticky wicket, right? Like
Yep.
it's always been a thing for the West Marches, and I think it's so crucial. Travel and then the fairy tale monster bullshit because traveling is what sandboxes are fundamentally kind of about.
Mm-hmm.
Have you
Traveling, exploring, and then like digging beneath the crust of a rich world that exists around you.
rich crust? Yeah, totally. I feel that. And letting the players decide where to make those, where to bury in, where to get those holes, because And again, like this I think is the huge challenge for sandbox GMs, where it's like, cool, you have to make up a bunch of stuff. You got to be prepared in case the players just fuck off in a random direction. But by the same token, you got to be prepared for that stuff that you came up with. Just be like, nah, just take it away. Not interested.
Yeah. So actually, interestingly enough,
you gotta bring the whole dessert cart in case somebody wants cake and someone wants pie. Because if you don't have pie, you're gonna look like an asshole.
Yep.
Yeah. God.
Interestingly enough, for me, I feel like I could run an entire session of West Marches with zero prep at this point, purely off of the random tables that I'm using. And that part of it feels quite powerful, where it's like you go exploring, maybe you find some crazy location, maybe you find some crazy monster, maybe you run across something that's pre-placed into a hex, who knows? But like I've run multiple sessions of the West Marches before where like players just went off in some crazy area I didn't have any plans for. And between the random tables inspiring me for my own creativity and like on the fly improvisation, I had no worries at all. So like I think for me it would be super rewarding to create a rigorous mechanical system that allows other GMs to replicate that and just be like, well, let's sit down, open the book, roll some dice, done.
Yeah, I think, gosh, it's tricky though, because I think you can, on the one hand, prepare GMs systemically for that kind of stuff. Like you can create mechanisms to help prepare them, but I feel like if we took all that prep stuff and you went back in time and you gave it to episode 1 West Marches Steven, he would probably be like, hey, I need to prepare, right? Probably. Like you've learned from playing, and that's the tricky thing for a lot of like people ask questions about like, how do I get better at doing whatever in GMing, and you're like, do a lot of it, like do a bunch of it and do it kind of badly and figure out why it's bad. Like, well, I don't want to say I don't envy you your task of like having a vision and having a tool set that doesn't support that vision, but I think we all have fun anyway, and that's I'm not gonna white wolf this shit and say that's the only thing that matters, but it's certainly nice that we can have fun with the limited tool set.
I don't know. I love what happens on the West Marches. I am just constantly tickled pink by everything that the players decide to engage with. And anytime the players decide not to engage with something, that's also an important decision, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, personally,
I would never say, Adam Koval, you must engage with the Elven Caravan, because that's no choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, personally, for me, the thing I try to do is that the more it seems like you're excited about us doing something, the more I try to get everyone not to do that thing.
Yep,
the more I'm
that's
like,
a safe plan. I wish.
Yeah, I know you, and the things that make you excited are the things that make me dead. So
the other thing, the other side of that is that I actually need to get better at providing the reward for going off and engaging with those things that are risky. And I think right now I'm not quite hitting that mark.
It's tricky because you're being counterbalanced by the quest situation, right? Yes. Where like when I know there's this like known and unknown thing where we know if we do the quest we get some big chunk of XP. If we do the side thing, maybe it'll be 3 hours of nothing, right? And like so it's hard to put up the maybe against the known reward. I don't know, like this format of the show also fights it a little bit, because it's like, okay, we got 4 sessions, let's make something happen. Like we gotta achieve a thing in order to get XP at all. So achieve. It's certainly easier now than it was when it was 4 hours.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there are definitely episodes where, you know, we'd get to hour 3 and I would be like, nothing is happening. My sword arm is getting twitchy.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's been really cool for me, both as a participant, as an observer, to watch the game and the show and the hybrid between those two things evolve over time. And I think that we're lucky to be in a group of people who are willing to just be like, I don't really know about role-playing games, so you just tell me
whatever you tell me.
I'll tell me the thing, and cool.
It's actually really good. Like everybody who's come on the West Marches has been really cool about just being like, yeah, sure, let's try those rules. Whatever, I don't care.
Do you feel hesitant? Like, I think this is an advantage you have in that most people are not like D&D pros. Do you ever feel hesitant when like there are people on the show who are a little bit more like, oh, I know how to Dungeons and Dragons?
No.
Good. That's good.
I mean, like even the people who are very I know how to Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, like you, Neil, Jeff, Like, even them, when I'm like, okay, here's the way we do things on this show, they're like, okay, cool, let's go. Let's murder shit.
Yeah.
And, when it comes down to it, the core of the game is still Dungeons & Dragons. So, like, even if I'm like, okay, roll some random stuff and let's see if anything happens when you're traveling. Oh, you rolled 3 Peritons in a row.
Right.
Like, okay, but still, once the Periton is there, they fight it just the same way they've always played. Like,
yeah.
And they're successful at it. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, it's been fun. It's been frustrating in certain places, but just because of these things. But it's been really nice to, like, I like being able to engage with it, knowing what you're doing while we're doing that, like seeing where some of that stuff is happening.
Yeah.
So if by some fluke of fate anybody watching this has not yet checked out the West Marches, you should. There's some cool stuff there. Good. Well, keep me abreast of the situation, and and we'll check in again next time we hack.
I'm getting the God rays.
I know, it's beautiful.
I've got one little sliver in my door back there where the sun is just barely able to shine in. So we're going to see some fanciness on my screen for the watch.
This episode of Hack Attack brought to you by J.J. Abrams. Yeah, so today the reason we're all here together is that I have a new challenge ahead of me. There's a hack to be made, and this one's a bit different because I'm watching your camera slowly like brighten. I'm waiting for you to just vanish and like for a choir of angels to like carry you up into heaven. It's kind of beautiful.
Exactly. Yep.
So what I'm trying to do is create a system for a role-playing game that doesn't currently exist. Like the game does, and that's cool. But I don't have the mechanism that I need for this part of it. So this is going to be a spoiler for folks who are not caught up on Balance of Power. Balance of Power is a new role-play show, and I'm going to spoil it. So there's 2 episodes. Just if you're not caught up, sorry, but this is what it's about.
Be warned.
So in Balance of Power, because it's a Star Wars show, it's about the New Republic. It's just post Return of the Jedi. It's about the New Republic trying to establish itself, and it's about the entrenched former government of the universe, the Galactic Empire, and how they are in conflict, because that's what is the fucking show is called. Star Wars. It's a war in the stars, and so what I'm trying to do is create a system to balance the competition, the indirect competition of 2 separate groups of characters, right? So I have an Imperial team. I have 4 players who are playing the bad guys, and I have a Republic team, and it's 4 players on the light side, and they're going to be directly affecting each other's outcomes, but not ever face to face until maybe some big 8-player carnage at the end.
Yeah.
So the challenge that I have here is creating a way for that to actually matter in the game and not have it just be GM fiat, right? Not just be like, because I don't want to be responsible for who's winning. I want to disclaim as much of that to the mechanics as I possibly can. And obviously the game was not designed for that.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's designed for a team of rebels fighting the big bad empire and whatever. So the challenge ahead of me is to find a way to mechanize the success or failure on some granular level, so it's not just like you did a mission, 1 mission point.
Yeah.
Right. I looked at we'll talk about what I've been thinking about for this when we get into it a little bit. But my challenge and my design goal here is to create a system that people can watch as an audience, they can check in on between episodes, and they can see who is winning the Star War, basically, right? Like I want the viewers to be able to tune in. We've talked a little bit about letting the audience cast an influencing vote on a episode to episode basis. There's some like Team Rebel, Team Empire, like hashtags floating around that I'd like to leverage. I'm really going to try to leverage social media for this one. But what I want to do is put stuff in the game that the players can do to further their side, right? To win against the enemies. Which is to say the other players. So I'm presently I've got a basket full of ideas and very little in terms of like how to make that work. So I have enlisted you now that you've returned to Earth.
Yes. We've all come back down a little bit.
So yeah, that's my goal, right? Is to disclaim some of the fiat, build a sort of tug of war system, and to implement it in a way that's like fun to keep an eye on week to week, so that at the end of the campaign I can decisively say, the Empire won or the Rebels won.
Yeah. A tug of war.
Yeah.
To measure and see progress. Wow, there's a lot to dig into here.
Right.
This is fun.
Yeah, it's a little different than the usual hack attacks because it's not just like, man, this game is crap. Let's uncrap the game. It's like the game's pretty good, but not built for this. I wanna take my Honda Civic off road. How do I do?
Nice. Okay, so you want to disclaim GM fiat?
Yeah, because I mean, I could just be like, "Yep, you did the mission, and I think this mission is worth 5 star victory points." Cool. Here, have I don't want to fucking Dumbledore my way through this shit and be like 10 points to Gryffindor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I want the rules to matter. I want the audience to be able to watch and to say, "Hey, they're going for the extra objective or whatever," right? Like I want to be able to put in front of, because this is going to be player facing too. I'm going to say this is a 6-point mission with whatever. This is a 10-point mission, and the higher like difficulty missions. I want it to be a little video gamey in that regard. There'll be an ongoing narrative, of course, but I want this game element to be there so that they can say, hey, if we blow up this hangar full of TIE fighters, that's going to steal 2 points from, House Slytherin. And they'll know that these objectives are in place.
Yeah. Okay, so like the important things here are player control over the system. And then also, along with player control, GM balance.
Yeah.
Which is like when you design a mission that's 10 points of difficulty for Empire and you design another mission that's 10 points of difficulty for the Rebels, they are actually similar.
Approximately similar, and yeah.
That's tough.
Well, the great shit irony of this is that they're terrible games for Star Wars, but if we're playing like Saga Edition, this would be fucking easy, right? Because everything's got challenge ratings, and all I have to do is be like, this is a CR10 mission. It's a shame that those games are so bad for Star Wars.
Now, actually, have you ever heard of a thing called rational level design, Adam?
I have indeed. Hit me.
Excellent. Good. So when I was a dungeon designer on the Secret World, like we didn't have any concept of we were making up our own concepts of how much experience points monsters were worth, right? Of course, because that's what you do when you make a game. And we didn't have any concept of any obvious mechanized concept of which monsters were harder than other monsters.
Right.
And as we sat down and we came up with a system that mechanized that. And we started off with like 1 monster is 1 point. 2 monsters is how many points? I don't know, 3 points, because 2 monsters is not just twice as hard as 1 monster. And then it's like, okay, a ranged monster is not 1 point. A ranged monster is 2 points. And a monster with an area of effect is 2 points. And, like all of this. And we sort of built it up. And then what you can do once you've built up your general sort of rough guidelines for like what makes encounters difficult or not, is you can begin sort of creating encounters at certain difficulty levels. And what we would do for the dungeons is we would try to hit that sort of peaks and valleys ascending flow. That's so popular in game design. And then we would test it. And the actual, the impressive thing about it is, without even play testing it at all, just plopping the monsters in there together from the rational level design sheet worked pretty well. It was close.
Yeah.
So we would have to there's an opportunity there for creating something that can systematize or mechanize the difficulty, even though Star Wars perhaps doesn't do it the way that 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons does.
Yeah, I mean, looking at so there's this thing. There's a system in the game called duty and contribution, which I'd like to use if I can. So when you make your characters, everyone by default starts with 20 points in duty, which contributes to the sort of magnitude of your character's contribution to the cause, your Empire Rebels, and it goes up. And this is a point where it's kind of frustrating. It goes up arbitrarily because it just says basically in the book, like, hand out points of duty based on whether you think they're being good rebels or not, which is horseshit, is what it is. But so it teaches you that the GM just gets to award these duty points, and then you build up, and then when the group's duty total goes over 100, it all resets back to 0, and your contribution rank goes up by 1. And at each contribution rank, the game tells you, at rank 1, award the team, like a spaceship upgrade or a base upgrade. So there is a little bit of that like gaminess, and I'd love to tie the duty rewards into this in some way. So it's like when you complete a mission, everybody gets like however many points.
It's such duty, yeah. Super cool.
And then, contribution rank basically measures how well the group is doing, but it all relies on GM throwing out points for whatever. It's like you did good. So I'd like to make that a mechanical thing that I can say, if you complete these objectives, and I can make this, because the game is so mission focused, I can make this fictional. I can say, Crix Maydeen has given you a mission. Do you want to do the, mission A, which is a difficulty 1 mission? You could probably complete it in 1 session if you're focused, right? So you'll get 1 point. Or you could do a harder one. It'll give you 3 points, but it might take 2 sessions. And if you do that, then the rebels might do 2 missions faster than you. And I can kind of tie that into the existing like reward structure. Yeah.
Like measuring points per session will have to be pretty rigorous, because you don't want to end up in a situation where like doing either the most easy mission just repeatedly, so you can do like 2 a session or something like that, or doing the hardest mission. You don't want either of those to be the obvious answer, right?
Yes, I want there to be tension, and I want after the session, once I do all the checking up, and I tweet out like, today Team Rebel earned 3 points for completing a mission. I want Team Empire to be like, fuck, they're 2 points ahead. Now we have to take a gamble and do a harder mission than I think we're ready for.
So because we are talking high level about the general things and not necessarily digging deep into any one specific thing, have you thought about the blue shell?
I have, yes.
Okay.
I assume the blue shell you're referring to is the Mario Kart blue shell?
Exactly. So, if Rebels get super far ahead and Empire's like, well, we don't want to play anymore, you don't want that. So you want there to be the opportunity for getting things that either rocket you up close to your opponent or just ahead of your opponent or whatever, so that there's a way for people who are way far behind to catch up.
Yeah, and my concern is that I want there to be ways to reduce your opponent's points as well. So like there might be a mission that only gains you 1, but if you do it, there's like a sub goal inside it that you can, if you succeed at that, you're going to not only get the 1 point, but you can reduce your opponent's pool by like 1d4 points or something, right? Like you can hit them where it counts.
Yeah, exactly.
So like sub goals, sort of comeback mechanics. I also want to avoid, because I think the danger with the blue shell situation is you get to a point where the only mission that matters is the last one, right?
Yeah.
Like in Mario Kart, fuck the first 2 laps. They don't count. It's just that last one that matters for anything. Yeah, so I want to try to avoid that. I want this tension to be something that's present in the decision-making of the players as a group from session to session.
Well, seriously, guys. Gap closing missions are a huge part of Star Wars lore. Like, what else do you call a single band of X-Wing fighters blowing up the Empire's Death Star other than a comeback mission?
So what we're looking at here in terms of what I imagine, like if you imagine the Star Wars, let's say leading up to the first movie, right? So the Empire, they're like, we're going to take 1,000 1-point missions, right? We're just going to keep doing 1-point missions and save up our points. We're going to spend 1,000 points on the Death Star. Boom, we got Death Star.
Yep.
All right, cool. Now we got a Death Star. All we gotta do in the next mission is just blow some shit up. And the rebels are like, we're not gonna do anything. We're gonna wait. We're gonna wait. We're gonna do 1,000 point mission and blow up the Death Star.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Right. Like it's not like the rebels won because they blew up the Death Star. They just evened the playing field.
Yes.
And that's kind of why the game sort of starts at zero, because like they're both in a position, both the New Republic as being like scrappy and kind of shitty, and then the Empire as having just got their ass kicked. They're both kind of at a flatline position, so it gives us place to start at zero.
Cool. All right. So so we gotta figure out a way to put control into the hands of the players over knowing where their status is, knowing what the enemy status is. Maybe you could even have missions that allow them to know more about the enemy status, right? So it could just be like your enemy is within 5 points of you. Your enemy is within 20 points of you or whatever, right? And then you can do a mission to be like, oh, the enemy is at 13 and you're at 11.
There's a degree of sort of ex-communist to it as well, for sure, where it's like, shit is getting worse. You're falling behind. What are you gonna do? And yeah, I definitely think like Bloodied in D&D, maybe there are things that trigger when it's like, yeah, they're like 10 points ahead of you. Okay, well, this is a big gamble. Do you want to take the risk? If you do, it'll close the gap by whatever.
Yeah, totally. And then we've got to figure out some kind of a way to guarantee that a 10-point mission for the Rebels is similar challenge as a 10-point mission to the Empire.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about like what the tug of war looks like. Are you thinking that they're both filling independent pools, or is it sort of a point that they're moving around a center point? Or
I like the idea in theory of it being a tug of war, of it being like, this is zero. We go 2 dark side, 3 light side, and they pull it back and forth. And I imagine most of the time it'll hover in between, right? So it'll be like the dark side gains a 3-point lead and it pulls it that way. But also 2 competing like bars is fine. I think the advantage of the tug of war is that it makes it less like, well, they're 1,000 points ahead and we'll never catch up. It's like there's a range, there's a band and it moves slowly rather than both escalating.
So that like I think that's also fair. To a certain extent, if it's been pulled way over to the Empire side, then it also can feel like, oh, they're way ahead or whatever. But I'd say that there's also a disadvantage. I'm not necessarily saying that that's not a good or anything, but there's a disadvantage to the tug of war, which can be that it can sometimes feel like you're not progressing. Because it's like you're just, all of your effort is just keeping that needle at zero. Whereas if you're actually like filling your own pool, it's like, oh shit, we started out at 0 points, but now we're at 50 points. Like, yeah, the Empire's at 49, so technically we're +1.
Right.
But it feels like there's progress.
I think my core thing here is obviously to make it entertaining to both engage in as a mechanism and fun to watch, it go back and forth. So there's the spectator element to it, but I also want to be true to Star Wars. And I have some things to say about like global scale conflict and the pointlessness of it as well. So I do want it to feel a little like you can't win, right? Like I want both teams to feel a little like it's hard. Yeah. And I think that my goal there is in, I wonder how much visibility to present to the players, like how far ahead they are, or like my instinct is to make it completely visible to everybody. Like you can get intelligence reports that tell you how far ahead that's going.
So like, it is always a perennial problem with exposing explicit mechanical systems that it begins to reward certain behaviors and punish others that you may not want to reward or punish. For example, maybe it's really entertaining and really fun for one group to spend a session sort of, dorking around in the cantina. But they don't want to do that because they see Empire has 55 points, Rebels have 43 points. We need to take a mission. We need to complete it. No RP this episode. We're just dudes until we get the points.
I kind of want that, right? Like if you're a band of New Republic Commandos spending your entire session dicking around in the cantina, you are failing. Like you are fucking it up. That's not your job.
It's true, but a session of dicking around in the cantina could be 2 hours of real time, quote unquote, while there could be like 10 days of real time in like an Empire.
Time has to not be an element.
Fair enough.
Like I thought about that a lot. I think that like, given we're building this from scratch, I think it's too complex to try to track galactic time on a one-to-one basis.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. But the point is like an entire role playing session can be built around a very minor like one
Sure.
encounter sort of setting that is fun for the players and it's fun for the viewers, but it doesn't tie into the mechanical system or whatever. I mean, like maybe you'd even want to be like there are phases to the war, and like during the on phases it's mission time, and during the off phases there's like weird little other things you can do to like set up advantages for yourself.
Yeah, so this is fully a thing. Like Burning Empires has a phased conflict system built into it that I think is like incredibly ornate and complex, and I'm definitely going to go back and mine it for some stuff. But I like the idea of, because my whole kind of goal for this is to frame up the conflict between the Empire and the Rebels as a coin conflict, right? It's a counterinsurgency conflict. It's not about World War II style, like let's get a bunch of tanks and just roll up on the Empire. Like neither side has the resources to fight that kind of way. So it's like combination like commando guerrilla warfare stuff, right? Like blowing up the Death Star is less about a full frontal assault and more about the commandos blowing up the shield generator and then the strike team hitting the core, right? It's like smaller, focused spec ops stuff. And then also there is a degree of winning the battle of hearts and minds, right? Like, so there is room for that. Like, we're going to RP this victory. We're going to earn 3 points by going to a remote planet and helping them, reestablish their infrastructure, right? And that might involve chasing off some bandits. It might involve, making like two local tribes like get along better. Like they're not. It's not going to be all straight up like blasters and AT-ATs everywhere, right? Like that'll certainly be a part of it because that's Star Wars. But I think that there will be a degree of kind of side quests that are still granting you points.
Yeah.
I was going to say like so. For me, what I want to do is figure out the core thing that they're doing, like whatever, any good thing that the characters do, any successful endeavor that they come across contributes to this main mechanism, right? And we can granularize like how they get those points or how they move the needle back and forth. But once I get the needle figured out, once I get that scale sorted, then I can kind of like fill in the bottom ranks, because I have some other ideas about like downtime and between session stuff.
Cool.
So there's strata of this.
So my question was going to be, what do I get when the galaxy is rebel tendency, and I am a rebel? What do I get if it's Empire tendency?
Yes, right. Like, and that changing the game state depending on who's winning is very important too. So like if you go to a planet today and the rebels have 10 points, it's going to be trefoil flags and all the alien species getting along with each other. But in 6 weeks or a month or however long you come back and the rebels have like 40 points, it's going to be jackboots and red flags, right? Like,
I have a thought.
Hit me.
This is purely random. What if you have some sort of high level risk game going on, and earning points? Like, okay, this is a complete diversion from the tug of war. But each side is earning points through their actions that go onto a risk board, and when a certain number of points have been accrued, you can purchase an army that goes and conquers a planet. And then there's actually like a front line sort of moving across.
That was the thing that I've been like, let's figure out the main thing first, because there's definitely some like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood style, like you've earned enough credits to buy like an X-Wing squadron. Here are like some targets during the downtime. You've sent your X-Wings off. I don't tell you anything that happens. We come back and then I'm like, sorry man, your X-Wing squadron got blown up.
Yeah.
Right. Or like, yes, they blew up the Imperial base. You get 10 more resource points or whatever. You sent them on a pirating mission. Lots of video games do this, right? Like Dragon Age did this, the most recent one. Okay. And I like it. I think it's a cool thing. But it's there's a lot. Like that's like a whole kind of like faction turn there.
Yes, it's
right?
kind of like the points allow the players to buy into the faction turn.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of my plan. And Yeah, I mean, we could abstract that, right? We could break that down into instead of I control, 10 X-wing squadrons, and you've got a bunch of ATSTs, and you got ground troops, and I got like all that stuff. We could abstract it to like currently the galaxy is divided along several lines, right? Like you control the populace, you control so here's an example. So from a board game, the GMT coin series is like a big inspiration for me for this kind of like conflict modeling.
Mm.
It's a series of games that show historical insurgency as a game model, and in those games, for the most part, when you have a province, say you've got like a province in rural Afghanistan, it's got two different ways to control or to manage it, and each one has two or three sets, right? So it's like who has military control over this area, um, who has popular support, and there are varying levels of popular support. And so I imagine if I had an infinite amount of time and resources, I would do that with a galactic map and be like,
Yeah.
if you want the outer rim, you got to go send some resources out there, but it costs extra because it's far away or whatever. But we could abstract this
Yep.
out to who controls the space lanes, who controls public opinion, who has military control of the galaxy, who controls the underworld, right? Like who has influence in the underworld. We could do like five things that
Yeah.
are essentially like they could be cards, right? Like if we're imagining this skeuomorphically, it could be cards with red and blue sides, and be like
Yeah,
there are three
totally.
red cards on the board, and as such, you gain the Empire gains these advantages. Um, I'm just worried about like I like the idea of giving bonuses for having control over certain things, but I don't also want an avalanche effect where it's like, well, we have military control, which makes all our missions easier, so now we have transit control and like
Yep.
that kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, if for something like that, you would probably want there to be five or three, I mean, maybe even just three sort of
Yeah.
big targetable areas where it's less like one tug of war and more like three tug of wars. But then you'd want two of them to kind of be opposed, where it's like whoever has military control, like popular
Right.
support is trending towards the other
And
side,
that's
right?
that's Coin does that too. Those games do it where like to gain popular support, you undermine control. Or
Yes.
to gain control, you like, use the napalm
Well,
and you're
yeah,
like,
exactly.
yep, march in the soldiers. If Rodeo won't listen to the diplomats, then maybe they'll listen to the Star Destroyers, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I like that idea. I like the flip flopping of that, and I guess this has to be separate from the balance itself because the win condition, if two things are diametrically opposed, you can only ever have two of the three of them at once.
Well, I wouldn't even say they're diametrically opposed, just that like like if it's military and popular, it doesn't have to be, but if it
Whatever,
is,
but yeah, that's
having military support means that like when the other team does missions to gain popular support, they gain extra points.
right. Yes, I
Or
like that.
it's not like you can't have both, it's that it's hard to have those two. So it's easier if you're focusing on this one and that one, and it's easier for them if they're focusing on this one and that one, or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like it. I
Um,
like it affecting, and we can mechanize that, right? We can say, as long as the opposing side controls popular support in the galaxy, all of your checks based on anything social get like one downgrade, or
yep,
enemy opposition
totally.
gains an upgrade, right? Like it makes
Yep.
it so that yes, okay, Theron, like Jesse's imperial agitator. It's funny because the party, without kind of actively doing it, have created foils for each other. Like there's a kind of diplomat on each side. There's like a
Yeah.
stealthy kind of assassin character. There's like a military character. Like they're doing this for me already, which is kind of nice. But it's a
Yeah.
way that you can counteract your opponents by saying like, well, I want Jesse's character to be less effective at manipulating people, and so we're going to make it harder for them by winning popular support. And that's how you get your dicking around in the cantina missions that actually matter to the world, because you're like,
Yeah.
okay, we're going to use this mission to earn control over this particular part of the map.
Have you thought about like dungeon world style moves where they're kind of very broad, where it's like, encroach on territory or, assassinate a major figure or whatever? Have you thought about those things, like high level fictional moves being purchasable through points, where it's like, we've earned, 10 story points, let's spend them to assassinate an empire figure?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like the idea of giving them points to spend on a shopping list, and we can unlock options on the shopping list like you can't foment a rebellion on a planet till you have popular support in the universe. And it'll be interesting because I think that we can't prevent the players. It's kind of great because I know that the players in all these groups don't have the time to watch each other's full episodes, but they're going to read Twitter and they're going to read Reddit, and that all can stand in as intelligence. Like, I don't have to do bullshit mission sharing like intelligence. I can just be like, look, if you have the time to read Twitter, pay attention, you're good to go. And yeah, I think that what we're doing here is like buying up options from a list that are generic, right? You can spend your resources, and you can see we're starting to extrude subsystems here, right? Like we have the overall balance, we have the faction control over certain aspects of the universe, and then we have some other resource that I don't know where it's coming from, but we'd have to figure that out, that you spend on buying actions that are unlocked or not, depending on which of the 3 cards that you have flipped.
That's almost like fat creds, right? It's like you complete missions, and missions give you, dominance over factions and also fat creds. And when you have enough fat creds, you can purchase from the list. And maybe there's some generic options that are always available. And then if you own a faction, there's a subset of additional options that become available.
Well, and it rewards infrastructure. And again, going off some of the West Marches stuff, like, do you spend your credits, do you spend your investment now on a thing that will give you 1 hard, fast bonus, right? Like a one-time 5-point jump in the balance, right? Like sudden shift. The force is with you, right? Or do you invest those points in like something smaller that'll last the whole rest of the campaign?
That stand,
yeah.
So have you thought about this? And I'm going to spoil a thing that I've been thinking about for a purely theoretical future Great Pendragon campaign run on RollPlay, which I've never mentioned to anyone. But here's the idea. What I was talking with Renee when she was hanging out in Montreal, and she was watching another RollPlay show where there were like 4 major factions, and chat got to like join the factions, and they were required to change their chat color. And then individual like chat members could gain control of like faction NPCs for like faction turn kind of things or whatever. And what I kind of was toying with earlier just today, I think, was running like a Great Pendragon campaign with 4 people. Because like as Stephen Lumpkin, GM for RollPlay, I've never really had a long form show that's story driven. It's always been either the West Marches, which is lots of like weird groups, or Dark Heresy, or
yeah.
If I did a long form show, it'd be really cool to have like the 4 houses of the Pendragon Knights, and then chat can like align themselves with these 4 houses to like set up the force that the houses are able to bring to bear in army and stuff like that. Have you thought about aligning chat? Well, no, you even mentioned it a little bit earlier.
For me, what I would want to do is a more like feedbacky system like we had in Mirror Shades, but based on some kind of bot that would look at Twitter, and we would use a hashtag, like, RollPlay Team Rebel or RollPlay Team Empire. And at the end of the episode, or the end of a 2-week period, right, we would call for a vote. This would be like the Galactic Senate, and people would be able to like cast their vote. So for a 24-hour period, and then I would measure all those votes, and whoever got the most, we would knock them up 1 point or whatever, give them some resource. Like, the Galactic Senate has rewarded you X amount of resource points for this team.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of like out of game, whatever, like stuff for that. But the point of designing that system would be to do so in a way that feels impactful, but not like it's the only thing that mattered, because the amount of total unique Twitter followers based on a group, like if one side has more than the other, they're going to have that advantage.
I have actually done some thinking about how you could have a game that has a large number of spectators who are able, through a chat interface much like Twitch, to influence the game state and the and the playing board of the competitive players within it. I have done some brainstorming along those lines.
Yeah, so I don't know, and maybe time will see me out as the person in the wrong here, but I feel like as a DM and as a GM or whatever it's called in Star Wars, I like clear lines of authoritative control. I like improvising, right? I improvise based on the things the players and the rules give me. I don't like the idea of having to look to some mass entity for like high level, like GMing related stuff.
I think what you would do in that, or what I would do in that situation, is define high-level options and then say, okay, in this GM turn, we have these 3 options. Chat, vote whether there's carpet bombing across the galaxy, whether there's pride going on.
That would be the place that I would want to do it. I think what's interesting for me is the idea of, I want the audience to be able to fictively play a role in some way, right? Like, I want them to be a stand-in for something that's happening in the fiction, a separate non-player player kind of thing, because I think that if it's just like, if it's not like grounded in that fiction, then it can be kind of just obviously like, okay, well, you get your +1 bonus from Twitter today, like, and that's fun and it's interesting. But I think I want to try to make it mean something so that I can narrate. And like the Swan Song GM turn is fun and everything, but the most valuable thing for me about it is giving me stuff to GM off of, right? To say the universe has changed, like since last month, you see something on the news or there's a protest on this planet or whatever. I want it to be able to inform. I want chat to be the people of the galaxy, right?
Yep, totally. I mean, it could even be a thing where it's like, if you own popular support, then at certain breakpoints, you just get a random chat voted thing. But it's like, you create the options that chat is voting on. You know how powerful they are, and
that's actually a really good idea. It makes popular support a bit of a wild card because you don't get to choose the reward. It could be like infrastructure control, military control, or military dominance, and popular support. And if you have popular support, you'll get something. You'll get one of like 3 things, and then chat will vote on those. So that's certainly a way to integrate some of like chat's input as well, because then it's not about who's winning, it's about whoever has the thing. What do you want to give them for their next mission?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like a team of rebels or speeder bikes or a force sensitive Ewok, like
everybody would vote for the force sensitive Ewok.
Then that's the trick too, because like chat's not going to understand the mechanisms or need to. We got to design the game, so it can't just be the funniest option.
Funny, yeah, exactly. It's or weird or dramatic, right? It's like some of chat will vote for the silly thing, some of chat will vote for like the thing that's going to shake things up the most, and some chat, who knows what they'll vote for.
I think and I think that's the thing is like, and this happens. Really, whenever you have a lot of choice available to people, they tend to go for what they perceive to be the most entertaining option. If they don't understand the subsystems built into it, they're like, I don't really get this. What's the funniest thing I could do right now? What's the thing that'd be the most amusing to deal with?
Totally.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, when I was thinking about this for a game, it was things like, okay, the entire arena has like meteors falling all over it. So every player here, like, chat has created a problem for everyone, or the entire arena has supply drops falling in it, and therefore chat has created an opportunity for everyone. But
I mean, I guess that's the other option if we want to keep the flip things being all player controlled. We could move chat's influence to acts of God, basically, right? And be like, all right, so this is week 2, because we're gonna abstract things in our terms. So it'll be like, this is week 4 of Balance of Power. It doesn't matter like what time in campaign it is, because we'll abstract it out and the war will just be going on. But during week 4, here are the 5 or whatever options that might happen in the sector at large, right? It might be like a new space lane is discovered, or a force temple is found on a planet, or whatever. Like things that will affect like everybody's circumstances, no matter what missions they're on. So it affects the dark and the light side evenly with the same circumstances, right? Like everybody's sick of the war this week. It's it's like everybody in the galaxy is sick of the war, so they hate all of you equally. Everyone's diplomacy checks are two downgrades now. Like right. So like global kind of like there. I guess the idea here would be to turn over the chat would be the force.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just like the fickle alignment.
Midichlorians.
Yeah, totally.
You hear that, chat? You're midichlorians. We all wish you'd never been invented.
How dare you?
I'm kidding. You're not. You're the good kind of the Force.
Should we take a quick break and then come back for another 50 minutes or so and talk about more specific details.
Let's discuss subsystems and currency when we get back, because I want to talk about how you buy a flotilla of Corellian corvettes.
Yeah, totally.
All right,
Sounds
cool.
good.
All right, stick around. We'll take a short break, and Chad can rage about being midichlorians. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes with more Hack Attack.